Okay, to continue our work with bonds payable, we're now going to look at exercise 14.3, also on page 830. Let's read through it. They give us a situation, you guys, similar to what we had 5 different times in exercise 14.2, but they want journal entries for the issuance of the bonds and an interest payment 2 times along with amortization of the discount or premium. So let's go through it. They tell us the Bradford Company issued 10% bonds. Okay, that's your stated or contract rate. Dated January 1 with a face amount of $80 million, and they were issued on January 1, 2016. The bonds mature on December 31, 2025, so the term is 10 years. The face amount is $80 million. And they say for bonds of similar risk and maturity, the market yield is 12%. There's your market or effective rate. Interest is payable semi-annually on June 30th and December 31st. Okay, number 1, determine the price of the bonds at January 1, 2016. What they want to know is how much cash is the issuing corporation, Bradford Company, going to receive when they issue these $80 million bonds. Well, you should probably be old pros at this by now. You guys, really what we're doing in exercise 14.2 and what we're going to do first here, these first 4 steps, get you to this number, which will be your debit to cash on number 2, the second instruction. So let's go through and determine the cash proceeds from the bond issue first. The face amount was $80 million. Okay, maybe that takes care of our formatting there. So we'll say the face amount, $80 million, times a factor from our table, present value of $1. Now remember that was back on page P2. But let's see what we're dealing with here first. It was a 10-year term with interest payable semi-annually, so we're dealing with 20 interest payment periods at half the market or effective rate. Remember that market rate is an annual rate of 12%, so every 6 months that would be 6%. So we go to the table, present value of $1 on P-2. We'll come down to 20 periods and across to 6%. I believe we found this factor already in the previous problem. 0.31180. Now we're going to multiply 80 million times the factor from our present value table. So the 80 million to be received 10 years from now with interest payable every 6 months at 6%. It's actually only worth $24,944,000 today. All right, now how much interest will Bradford pay every 6 months? Well, we'll take the 80 million, and then we're going to multiply not by the full stated rate, but half the stated rate. Why? Well, that stated rate is an annual rate. Here it's 10% for a year, so for half a year or 6 months it's 5%. Okay, it equals 80 million times 5%. Gets us $4 million. So that's how much interest Bradford Company will have to pay every 6 months on this $80 million. $4 million. Okay, now $4 million every 6 months. I've got interest misspelled up here, or mistyped. It's both, I guess. Okay. Sorry if I've got a lot of those, you guys. Typing's really not my specialty. But anyway, here we go. All right, what is $4 million every 6 months for 10 years? What is that worth in today's dollars? Well, we're going to use the same 20 interest payment periods at half the market rate. So 20 periods at 6%. Okay, so our annual interest was $4 million. We'll go to our present value of an ordinary annuity. Because interest payments are an annuity, you guys. Annuity just means equal cash payments over time. This is $4 million every 6 months for 10 years. That qualifies as, of course, as equal cash payments over time. So we'll go to the present value of an ordinary annuity table on P-4 in the back of your book. 20 interest payment periods at 6%. $11.46992. Okay, and this is going to be equal to our $4 million times the factor from our table. So the $4 million every 6 months for the next 10 years. What that's $8 million a year. What that amounts up to 80 million, right? Well, it's not worth 80 million today though, because we have to wait the full 10 years to receive the full amount. So in today's dollars, it's only worth 45,879,680. You like how I say only 45 million? Anyway, so now to get the cash proceeds from the bond issue, we just add together our two present values. So we got 24,944,000 and 45,879,680, and then we're going to sum those. 70,823,680 is how much Bradford will receive on January 1st, 2016. When they issue these 10-year, $80 million bonds. So they're not going to receive $80 million. They're only going to receive up front $70,823,680. So these bonds are going to be issued at a discount. The amount of the discount will be the difference in the face amount and the cash proceeds. So that's instruction 1. They ask you to determine the price of the bonds at January 1, 2016, and here's your answer. Okay, now instruction 2 says prepare the journal entry to record their issuance by Bradford Company on January 1, 2016. Okay, so I'm going to come over to the journal page. January 1st. The issuing corporation Bradford is going to receive cash. How much was it? Well, let's go back and look. 70,823,680. Okay, bonds payable, the liability will always go on the books at the face amount. It'll later on come off the books at the face amount. It's a liability. So it increases on the credit side. Bonds payable is going to go on the books at 80 million. So now what? The entry doesn't balance, right? Well, remember we said the difference in those two is going to be our discount. We'll call that discount on bonds payable. It's equal to 80 million minus 70,823,680. So we've got a discount here of 9,176,320. That takes care of instruction 2. Now instruction 3 wants us to make the journal entry for June 30th, 2016. And it says what? Prepare the journal entry to record interest on June 30th, 2016 at the effective rate. Okay, now the way we do these calculations, you guys, let's go over here and look back to our calculations page and look at our notes I have here for instruction 3. Alright, first, the carrying amount of bonds payable would be the face amount, in this case $80 million, plus any unamortized premium. Unamortized just means the portion that we haven't written off the books yet. At this point, we haven't written off any. So it would be we'd add back the entire premium, or in our case, we will deduct the entire discount at this point to get to the carrying amount. Okay, cash paid for interest, which will be our credit to cash, will be the face amount times the stated rate for the interest payment period. In this case, that'd be half the stated rate. Our debit to interest expense will be the carrying amount times the market rate for the interest payment period. Okay, and then the amortization of the discounted premium would be the difference in cash paid for interest and interest expense. So let's calculate these here. We'll start with cash paid for interest. Well, that one's pretty easy, you guys. You've actually already got it calculated up here, right? How much is interest every 6 months? $4 million. Right? So that's how much cash they're going to have to pay out. But it's equal to $80 million times half of the stated rate. The stated rate's 10%. Half that would be 5%. Okay, so that $4 million will be our credit to cash when we go back to the journal entry. Now let's calculate interest expense. Okay, well, it's going to be the carrying amount of the bonds payable times the market rate for 6 months, which is our interest payment period. Well, that's going to be equal to the carrying amount would be $80 million minus any unamortized discount. Well, that discount was over here. Okay, let's try this again. For interest expense, it's our $80 million minus the unamortized discount, which is really just going to bring us back to this $70 million number. But that unamortized discount was $9,176,320. So minus $9,176,320. And you guys, that's going to give us this cash proceeds number. It is the carrying amount in the beginning. Okay, and then we're going to multiply that times the market rate for 6 months. Well, the market rate for a year is 12%, so for 6 months would be 0.06. So our interest expense is actually more than the cash that we're going to pay out for interest. The reason why is because we're making up for that discount, right? When they're issued at a discount, that creates more interest expense for the issuing corporation in future periods. So now let's come over and make our journal entry. We're going to debit interest expense for $4,249,421. 4,249,421, was that it? 4,249,421, there we go. Alright, and then we know we're going to credit cash for the actual cash paid out, which is our $4 million number. Cash paid for interest. Alright, now, the difference is the amount of the discount that we're going to write off or amortize, take off the books, when we make this interest payment. So we're going to, the discount went on the books as a debit, it will have to come off the books as a credit. You could have credited cash first. The discount on bonds payable is equal to the difference in these two. The amount of the discount we're going to amortize here, I'll put that in your notes. Amortization of the discount of premium is the difference in cash paid for interest and interest expense. Now the discount comes off, excuse me, I got that on the wrong side. It should be 249,421. I'm sorry, you guys probably caught that. That needed to be on the credit side to balance the entry, right? The discount went on the books as a debit. It would have to come off the books as a credit. I was about to point that out and noticed I had it on the debit side. Please excuse me there. Okay, now part of the discount has been amortized. So when we make the entry, that was number 3. When we make the entry for number 4, the amount we multiply by to get our interest expense will have increased from the $70,823,860. It will increase by the amount of the discount that's been written off, the $249,421. So let's go over here and do those calculations. Okay, similar deal here. It's the same thing, it's just a little extra step. We're a little further along. Cash paid for interest is not going to change. It's 80 million times half the stated rate, which is 5%. Get it looking nice. There we go. All right, now your interest expense is going to be equal to the 80 million. You could do this a few ways. You could take the original carrying amount, the 70,823,680, and add back the 249,421 that we amortized. Or you could say, that's probably the best way to do it, or you could say that 80 million minus the original discount, which was 9,176,320, plus what we amortized, 249,421. Alright, then multiply that number by our market rate of interest for 6 months. Our market rate for the year is 12%. For 6 months would be 6%. So we get interest expense here of $4,264,376. Notice it's gone up slightly because the carrying amount had increased by the amount of discount that we had amortized. So as you go along through this 10-year period, your interest expense will go up slightly each time. And eventually that carrying amount will go from the 70 million and change it started with up to the $80 million face amount. Okay, so here we'll make our entry a debit to interest expense. What is that? $4,264,386. $4,264,386. Just want to make sure I don't make a mistake there. Okay, now this is on December 31. A debit to interest expense for that amount. Again, you could put cash on that second row if you wanted. I'm just going to keep it consistent with what I did before. We'll credit cash for the amount that's going to be paid out. That won't change. It's going to be $4 million each time. And then we're going to credit the discount to take it off the books, or a portion of it off the books, for the difference in these two. Discount on bonds payable will be, try to debit it again. It's going to be, it goes on the books as a debit, has to come off the books as a credit. So it's equal to our $4,264,386 minus the $4 million. So it's $264,386 is our credit to discount on bonds payable. And that, you guys, is instruction 4. So that wraps up that problem. Remember, to calculate interest expense, you take the market rate for the interest payment period. If it's semi-annual, you have to cut it in half, times the carrying amount. To get cash paid, you know that from the get-go, from step 2. But to get cash paid, it's always a face amount times half the stated rate, if it's semi-annual. And then we'll amortize the discount or premium for the difference in interest expense and cash paid for interest. Whoa. Okay, if you have any questions, please let me know, you guys. Hope this one goes well for you.